What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review. This time we're taking a look at The Shining, directed by Mike Flanagan, based off the Stephen King novel of the same name. This movie is the sequel to the Stanley Kubrick version of The Shining. So, I'm going to do my best to try and make this review as short as I possibly can because overall, I love Doctor Sleep. I thought this movie was fantastic. After seeing it again for a second time, I can honestly say that this is a damn good movie and it's a damn good sequel. It is a good sequel to the Stanley Kubrick movie, but it does a good job at telling its own story. And I thought it did it in a very, very solid and good way. Now, obviously, this had to change a lot of the source material from the actual novel, but it kept the overall premise of the story. And it had to do some it had to do some changes here and there because it has to act as a sequel to the Stanley Kubrick movie. Because let's face it, you cannot tell the Doctor Sleep story and not have it act as something independent from The Shining, because then it loses the whole you lose the whole focus of the story. No, the whole story of Doctor Sleep is we see Danny Torrance all grown up now going by Dan, who is played by Aaron McGregor, and we pretty much see Dan as an adult still traumatized by the events of the Overlook Hotel, still coming to terms and to grips for what he went through at the Overlook Hotel, what the hotel did to him and did to his family, just messing him up mentally. I love seeing Dan Torrance pretty much pick up the legacy of his father of being an abusive, of being an alcoholic person. You know, but unlike, Jack Torrance, who is an abusive alcoholic, Dan is using the alcohol to numb his pain, to erase his memories, but he can't do it. He can't numb himself because he still has the shining. He still shines on, and he's using booze to hide that fact. But Dan learns to lay off that a little bit when he starts communicating with this young girl called Abra Stone, who also has the shining to herself, and her and Dan start to have start to communicate a lot, and they form a really nice relationship, a really good uncle niece like relationship, and to me, this movie would have fell apart if the Abra Stone and Danny Torrance relationship did not work. I thought they had a good actress play Abra Stone. I thought she did a really good job with the material that she was given. I thought she was very mature in the role. She didn't come across as very annoying. I liked the chemistry with her and Aaron McGregor. To me, they feel like they are family. They feel so natural with one another. And I give all the credit to McGregor as well, who is a very seasoned and experienced actor. And I like how and you can tell on screen that he's shepherding this little girl as an actress as well, and it shows, it pays off because I think she holds her own with McGregor in this film, and like I said, the relationship to me it works. It's a very good bond that they form throughout the course of the film, and you really get attached to the relationship with Dan and Abra Stone, which to me it works perfectly. I like Dan's relationship with his friend Billy, played by Cliff Curtis. I like that a lot too. I would have preferred that Billy did not get killed off near the end of the movie. And if you're going to kill Billy off, at least do it in a way that's kind of more rewarding and not just out of nowhere. Pretty much Billy dies in a fight with the True Knots, and he dies when some girl just possesses him and tells him to shoot himself, and he takes a shotgun and pretty much shoots himself in the face. It's just so underwhelming because the movie did a good job of building up a friendship between Billy and Dan, and the gunfight with the True Knots when they get to the campsite is actually is entertaining, and it's very suspenseful. It's really cool. But I think Billy's demise is just very underwhelming to me, and I didn't really like it. I didn't really care for it. I would have at least had Dan, Billy, and Abra, the three of them together, go to the hotel, and I would have had Billy die within the hotel, having Billy not understanding Billy not really having a true understanding of what Dan and Abra are going through, and the hotel just consuming Billy. And then the hotel does what it does with Dan at the end of the movie as well. That's what I would have done personally, because I think Billy's too good of it was becoming a really good character. And now, like I said, I was really liking the relationship with him and Dan. And I just thought his demise near the end of the movie was just very underwhelming and just not good. Just for me, not good at all. But everything else you did with him, I enjoyed it. Other things I like, I like the villain Rose the Hat, who was the leader of this psychic, who's the leader of this group of psychic vampires called the True Knot. I like Rebecca Ferguson as Rose the Hat. I thought she did a really good job playing the villain. She has this mesmerizing, menacing quality to her, and I thought she played the role really, really well. I really, really enjoyed her. I would like to see more of Rebecca Ferguson in movies like this. I think because she played a really good, solid villainess in this movie. To me, she comes across as a real threat, and she does have a commanding presence as the leader of this tribe of psychic vampires who are just brutal and they are just vicious. And when you have a leader like Rose the Hat, who pretty much who can keep all of them under control and has what they want, which is steam. So pretty much the whole thing of the True Knot is that they feed off steam and they feed off people who have the shining because it has steam that gives them energy, that makes them last longer, make them not make, doesn't make them last live forever, but it makes them live long, very long lives because they feed off the steam, and the steam is perpetuated by fear. The best example of how this works, watch the baseball boy scene in this movie, which is a gruesome scene, and I applaud Mike Flanagan for going that route and showing the death of a child in agonizing pain. And I thought the actor Jacob Tremblay, who played the baseball boy, you feel his agony, you feel his pain, you are scared for him, and you're just flat out disturbed and disgusted by what the True Knot did to this little boy. Great scene. I love it a lot. Really, really great scene. So yeah, definitely look up the baseball boy scene in this movie because it really sells the True Knot as a legitimate threat to Dan and Abra Stone as the movie course chugs along. Uh, Other things I like about this movie, I love the references this movie has to the original Shining movie. Mike Flanagan did a little filmed some flashback scenes as kind of a way to fill in some gaps. Uh, I like the actress who played the role of Wendy. You know, I thought she did a good job at pretty much playing Shelley Duvall's version of Wendy. I thought she did fine. Carl Lumbly plays Dick Halloran, and of course, since Scatman Crothers passed away decades ago, my whole thing was how are you going to get Doc Halloran in this movie, and I thought Carl Lumbly as Doc Halloran did a great job. I love the scenes with him and Danny when Danny was a little boy, and I love the scenes with him and Dan when Dan's an adult. I thought it's great stuff, and I especially like the scene when Doc sees Dan at his most lowest rock bottom moments. I thought that was a really good scene, and I like the last scene between Doc and Dan when Dan pretty much has his life together. He's working at a hospice where he's nicknamed Dr. Sleep because he eases his patients into death. And I like the little scene that he and Doc have as well, which I thought was really, really cool. And I was liking the chemistry a lot with McGregor and Carl Lumbly. And I'd like to have seen more of Doc Halloran because I love Doc Halloran from the first movie. I thought Scatman Crothers as Dick Halloran was a great character, was a really good character. And I thought Carl Lumbly filled in those shoes as Dick Halloran perfectly. I thought he did a fabulous job. Good stuff. And of course, yes, Jack Torrance does make an appearance in this movie. He is played by Henry Thomas, and of course, Jack makes his appearance near the end of the movie, where Abra and Dan have to go to the Overlook Hotel as pretty much a last ditch effort to defeat Rose the Hat, because the only way you can stop someone like Rose the Hat, you have to go to a place that is more powerful than her, and that is just of a legitimate threat than Rose the Hat is, which is the Overlook Hotel, and the essence of that hotel, and just the evil that hotel, that just the negative evil energy that hotel possesses. And we see a nice little scene, which is a nice little recreation of the Jack and Lloyd bartender scene from the first Shining movie. This movie recreates that, only it's Dan talking to his dad, and it's a really, really cool, intense scene. I thought Henry Thomas did a really good job playing in his little cameo role. I liked it a lot. I thought he did a fantastic job, and I just love the scene in general. And I knew this movie was going to give us Jack Torrance. I just did not know how they're going to fit it in. Are they going to get of work? Are they going to like digitally create Jack Nicholson's face onto an actor like they did Peter Cushing with the Rogue One, or are they going to do a recast? They did do a recast, and I thought Henry Thomas did a really good job with it. He played the role fairly well, and it works for me. And I like the speech that the bartender gives Dan, because throughout the scene, the bartender saying, "I think you have me confused with someone else, sir." And then when Dan refuses to take the drink, that's when Jack comes out of the bartender and gives his son this little speech. And then we get the scene in the bathroom, which is a nice little recreation between Grady and Jack from the first movie. Only it's Jack telling Dan about the little girl and the problem that the little girl is bringing upon Dan. Pretty much trying to get into Dan's head, which he doesn't. Great stuff, great scene. I really, really like it a lot. Like this movie it has some things that I didn't really like, but it has too much good stuff that I love. Like I said, I love the recreation of some scenes from The Shining. I love the visual homages this movie has. Like there's this great scene where we see Dan at an AA meeting, and he's talking to the director of the AA meeting, and it's an exact duplication of when Jack first meets Omen. It's like shot for shot the same thing when they're sitting in the office in the first Shining movie. And then we get a nice recreation of the opening of The Shining when Dan and Abra are heading off to the Overlook Hotel. And yes, the Shining theme is featured prominently throughout this movie. We hear it in the beginning, and we hear it near the end where they go to the Overlook. So this movie plays great homage and a great respect to that first Shining movie. But like, again, it also tells its own story. This in essence is a redemption story for Dan. We see him at his lowest lows, and then we see him redeem himself at the end of the movie. Of course, after he unleashes the Overlook Hotel, because throughout this movie, so pretty much Dick Halloran teaches Danny how to pretty much use lock boxes to keep away the ghosts from the Overlook Hotel. But as a last-ditch effort, Danny had to unlock those boxes in order to save Rose the Hat. And of course, once the hotel consumes Rose, they then possess Danny. And it's a nice little, and pretty much Dan continuing the whole thing of him being a next generation of his father. He not only picks up his father's alcoholism, but at the end of the movie, he pretty much goes crazy like his father did. However, Dan is able to fight it, and he's able to redeem himself at the end by pretty much sacrificing himself to save Abra Stone. So I think for me, it's Dan, fighting off the Overlook, but I also look at it as Dan spiritually giving Jack his redemption as well, in a very different way, so to speak. I mean, the movie's not doing that, but when you look at the first Shining movie and you look at this movie, you can maybe subtly say that, Dan fighting the possession is him not only fighting it for himself, but also trying to redeem his father at the same time as well. Now, of course, since this movie is a sequel to the first Shining movie, that doesn't make sense. But since I am a fan and I love to make up, and everyone loves doing theories, that's my theory. All right, so let's wrap this up real quick. So, in terms of story beats, this movie works for me. In terms of casting, this movie is spot on, fantastic. Ewan McGregor as Dan is great. The actor who played Abra Stone is great. I like Cliff Curtis as Billy. I like Rebecca Ferguson as Rose the Hat, and I also like her crew as well. I thought those actors did a fine job with the material that they were given as well. I especially like the character of Crow, who was pretty much the right-hand man. I thought he did fine as well. I thought Abra's parents, they did fine for the little role that they had. I like the actors who did the flashback scenes from the first movie, Henry Thomas and the lady Alex Roscoe. I thought they did fine. Carl Lumbly as Dick Halloran was pretty much a chameleon. He played the Scatman Crothers role perfectly. From a production standpoint, I thought Mike Flanagan did a fabulous job. I love his directing style. It's very subtle. It's very clean and crisp. He doesn't do jump scare horrors. He's a really, really good horror director, and I want to see more of Mike Flanagan's work because I already enjoyed Gerald's Game, and I loved his work on the Haunting of Hill House TV show on Netflix. So Flanagan as a modern day horror director, he's got the goods, and I want to see him do more. I don't even think Flanagan's touched the iceberg as to how good of a horror director he can really be. I mean, this movie, again, well directed, really, really good stuff. I like the cinematography in this movie, though I think there are some instances that the movie's cinematography can be a little too dark for its own good to the point where you can barely make out certain things. And one of my biggest criticisms is the whole recreation of the opening of The Shining as Dan and Abra are going to the Overlook Hotel. The scene is great recreation, but the cinematography for it is just really, really dark. It's almost hard to make out what's happening, which is a shame because it's a really well put together recreation, and it's beautiful. I love it a lot. So yeah, that's another gripe I have against this movie as well. Though there are moments where the cinematography is great, and then there are moments where the cinematography is good, but it needs a little bit more color so we can see what's going on. Okay, so despite criticisms with how certain characters were handled and certain production beats, I overall think that Doctor Sleep is a really, really, really great movie, which is why I'm going to give it a solid 9 out of 10. I think this movie is too good to go below a 9, and if you just fix up those problems that I mentioned, this could have been an easy 10, for me at least. So yeah, there's obviously a whole lot more I could talk about this movie, but those are just my thoughts on what I feel about Doctor Sleep. Anyway, if you've seen this movie, let me know in the comment sections down below. Do you like it? Do you hate it? I would like to know. Like the video and subscribe, and I will check you back next time for more.